I've carved out my small little niche of this whole thing. My channel's not much. It's just kind of something that I like to do for fun, and I have a good time with it. And I'm sure there's a handful of people that enjoy what I do, and that's what it's all about. So when it comes to some of these other situations where I do a video like this, and I'm gonna name names or whatever, it's just like you get to a point where you're just tired of kind of pussyfooting around, and that's basically kind of where I'm at with this whole situation. Like, honestly, so many people get this wrong and they act like YouTube is like the be all end all, or you got to be a success, or you got to do this, or you got to match that. There's always going to be somebody that's bigger. There's always going to be somebody that gets more engagement. There's always going to be somebody that's better, quite frankly. So I've always looked at YouTube as a hobby, as something, a way for me to get my personal opinions out there. In sort of a video blog form, and I have very strong opinions about video games. Now, a lot of people will say one thing or the other, and I've learned something, right? If you guys have ever seen the movie Idiocracy, there's a courtroom scene where the guy is explaining very eloquently exactly the situation, and kind of giving the play-by-play of what's happening, and then the judge and everybody kind of just responds by calling the guy names. That's basically how I feel when I explain something, right? You get a bunch of herp derps out there that go, "Hey, crap gamer, man, Phil Spencer sure did own you in 2016, because I got that one Twitter clip where he said you canceled your game for putting it on PC so other people can play it. That was such a good one. Why did you turn on Xbox in 2016? Now, a cultured person would realize that this wasn't the case, that I, in fact, very much supported Xbox well into 2019. It wasn't until their E3 2019 that I really started to realize the huge difference in the quality between PlayStation exclusives and Xbox exclusives. And that was pretty much, after having played God of War and Detroit Become Human and, Horizon Zero Dawn. And, I was just Spider-Man, and they just had so many great games. And on the Xbox side, it's like State of Decay 2, Crackdown 3, Recore. You know what I'm saying? Like, the quality difference is insane. I had been playing more and more PlayStation. It's not that I switched, it's just that I was being honest about what was going on with me personally. And people just think that, well, you pander to the PlayStation crowd because there's more of them. Well, how does this make sense to anybody? I build up a big Xbox audience. I'm having a good time with Xbox. I really believe in Xbox. For years, Xbox was the better place to play and had more games. That changes. I be honest about the change. I'm completely honest about the change. And yet people think that, I full know that it's going to tank my channel and people are going to be pissed because I'm being honest about it, right? And I full know that, but I got to be honest. And, people think that somehow what goes on there is going to help my situation with YouTube and things like that. I knew exactly what I was doing, but I also knew that I couldn't live with myself being completely dishonest. Now, Phil Spencer, right? Like, I know people are like, oh, well, they'll ignore the fact that I'm right here and just jump to the fact that Phil Spencer and a 2016 tweet. Back in 2017, Phil Spencer says, we don't want to show a trailer for things that are 2 to 3 years away. And I will link this. You guys can check it out. This is what Phil Spencer said back then. He says, we're investing in new things. We signed things just recently that I thought, hey, from a PR standpoint, it would be really easy for me to put a trailer on the screen. But then I know the game is not coming for another 2 to 3 years, so I didn't want to do that. Spencer also goes on to mention that when he started his current job years ago, hardware was a big focus for the team, and he believes there was more to be done in the area. According to Xbox head, investing in software is important to Microsoft. Further, the team realizes it needs to invest in content in the gaming space, and specifically says the following about the issue. He says, and I quote, "This is a cheesy line, but I'll just say, trust that this is important to us as a platform from the top CEO of the company down. He wouldn't. I understand we need to invest in content in the gaming space, big AAA console games. I hear that, and I'm committed to that. Today, I want to talk about things that if you're going to buy a console, you'll be able to play. But I'll continue to work to deliver the games we did on hardware, we did on platform, and backwards compatibility, and we will do this on first party as well. It's critically important, and we don't want to talk about games that are 2 to 3 years away by showing trailers for them today." So this was 2007. This was 4 years ago, okay? And he said this, and this was just getting into that whole them buying studios and things like that. And listen, there's a million other different Phil Spencer lies and whatevers I can bring up, okay? So I want to fast forward because 2 years after this statement, we saw a trailer for 2 games coming to Xbox Series X, one being Hellblade 2 in 2019 at the Game Awards, and the other, Everwild, at Xbox XO 2019. So those are already 2 years ago that we've seen trailers for those games. Next year, obviously being 2022, would make it 3 years. And he specifically stated he doesn't want to show games that are 2 to 3 years out. Now, people might go, well, crap, didn't Xbox just come off of a good E3? And I think they came off a very good E3, a 7 out of 10. But that makes me look at 2020's E3 and go, what the hell was that? Why did they show all that stuff and announce all that stuff if they knowingly knew that it was that those games were at least 2023, some 2024, and maybe even beyond that? Isn't that beyond the 2 to 3 year mark that Phil said previously that he learned his lesson from announcing Crackdown and Scalebound too early? Right? Like, this is the whole thing. It's like you repeat your same mistakes over and over again. And I don't understand the thought process behind that, right? Like, to me, it never makes sense to go back and kind of have the same problem that you just had, right? Like, why does that make sense? Okay, this is the thing that I'm saying. Now, here's the thing. Let's just go to Everwild, okay? Everwild was announced in 2019. It was confirmed to be in pre-production. So they didn't learn from the other games just a couple years earlier? Now, here's the thing. Reports have emerged that the development of Everwild was completely rebooted in 2020 following the departure of its creator-director Simon Woodruff, and that the game was now targeting a launch in 2024. So this game announced in 2019 is now, because it was announced too early, which Phil Spencer said he didn't want to do, is it going to come till 2024? So you have 5-year incubation periods on this, and I know stuff happens, but I would love to ask, and by the way, this insider Clobril, he's on record as saying that this game is close to launch, and that it's probably a 2022 game. He said that at the beginning of this year, yet he's looked at as an insider. You have people like Colt Eastwood, who basically said that Halo was going to show poorly, and at first I thought it did, but when we saw the stuff afterwards in the multiplayer, it looked better than pretty much any Halo multiplayer I've ever seen. So he's listed as an insider. Where's the dealer gamings on this stuff? If you look at what they were talking about in their own podcast, they're hyping up stuff like Outer Worlds 2, which the trailer is an anti-trailer. It's CGI. They're saying they don't have anything to share, and there's not going to be anything to share for years. That game's probably at least 3 years away. You know, Contraband, the same thing. So where are all these Xbox people that do nothing that hype up Xbox and mislead people, right? I'm not saying you can't be happy about what there was to be shown off at the Xbox E3, because there was some cool stuff. But I'm saying is, how can you be okay with them lying to you and showcasing you and getting you to probably buy an Xbox in 2020 based off of stuff they announced, like Perfect Dark, Avowed, Fable, when that stuff is 3-4 years away still? Like, how is that okay? How is anybody okay with that? I think that's my biggest problem. These are the things that the Xbox folks should be addressing. Yes, I understand. It might come into play with your 6,000 to 8,000 reasons a month that you don't talk about this stuff, or all the super chats and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But how do you guys live with yourself by not bringing up any of this stuff? In fact, when I finally did hear somebody mention that they haven't delivered a game in a couple years, it got glossed over so fast. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's like you talk about it for more than 10 seconds and you feel like you're doing them a service. So many of these Xbox fans, and not all of them, because there's some genuine good Xbox fans, but so many of them, so many of the other kind, just want to be placated, just want to be lied to, just want to be told that their thing's the best and that they're the greatest. You know, I mean, look, Nintendo came out. I didn't like what Nintendo had to show, but it was, you know, for Nintendo fans, that was a 10 out of 10 and a better E3 than Microsoft showed, because Nintendo showed gameplay. You know, Microsoft is showing stuff in CGI, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, it's sort of a really, really bad situation. You know, when you just continue to pander and placate to people, it's just YouTube. It's not the end of the world. It's not a job. I mean, I guess it is probably to some of you guys now, but you know, it's not life or death. I don't understand the constant pandering and never talking about any of this other stuff, the lies or the bullshit. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, yeah, that's why people want to ask, hey, crap, who do you got a problem with? Like, you know, listen, you're going to gloss over the stuff. If you're going to be an Xbox dude, be an Xbox dude and talk about the good and the bad. I'm not saying you have to be, quote unquote, negative like me all the time, but damn, talk about some of this stuff. Yeah, Phil misled people. Hey, guess what? I'm disillusioned because Sony did that crap. You know, talk about generations and who would play that. Yeah, we poked fun of it and we called them out. We called them out for lack of expansion drives, all that kind of stuff. You got to talk about both sides of the coin. You can't just talk about the good without the bad. It's disingenuous and fraudulent. With that being said, slap that like button. Challenges out to anybody that has a problem with any damn thing that I just said. Otherwise, shut up. Speed on before you're peed on. Rack 'em up.